Hi there once again and welcome back to the Explaining History videocast. I'm talking a lot at the moment about different approaches to history, different ways we think about it. In the last couple of things I've talked a little bit about Marxism, and today I'm taking a gradual step forward to look at aspects of cultural history and to give a little flavour of what we think it is. You might be mistaken for thinking that cultural history is something akin to perhaps art history, and certainly that there are these different spheres. There are links between them. I mean, art history is very much more a kind of a separate discipline in itself, and certainly it's treated that way at an academic level. Cultural history, we're not so concerned in the kind of the histories of kind of the great works of art or things like that, great kind of works of culture. The subject of cultural history really is its understanding the production of meaning. Now that seems a bit kind of abstract, and it helps us to kind of have a bit of think about what culture actually is. And it's one of these terms that's so broad, so used, as in many ways it comes to mean, very little. So I'm going to give a working definition of an umbrella term. And a culture really, I guess, is a shared system of meaning. A way in which a group, a demographic, an ethnic group, a class, or what have you, people that broadly understand and kind of get each other, if perhaps even sometimes in a kind of a conflicting way, take the world around them and apply meaning to it, that they, again, have a sort of a shared sort of consensus upon. So where it gets interesting in history is where we see cultural change occur, and the interesting question is, why do certain cultures change at certain times? Why do certain societies change culturally in the way that they perceive and embrace or reject certain things, certain ideas, certain values, certain norms? So cultural history kind of springs a little bit from Marxism. Or from Marxist historiographies. If you look at the last video when we're talking about history from below, and particularly from historians like E.P. Thompson, was the understanding about how things like kind of class identity and class cultures were produced, how people, the rank and file, the ordinary, the ignored, the overlooked, tended to create meaning out of the circumstances that surrounded them. So class itself is a cultural history. The way in which people not only organised to protect their economic interests, but the way in which they protested, celebrated, the way in which kind of religious notions and social ideas developed and emerged as a result of the economic realities around them. These are the things that have concerned Marxist historians throughout the kind of the middle period of the 20th century. However, the idea by the 1970s that culture was the subject of or the product of economic conflict or economic realities solely and simply, and that class was the determinant of culture alone, started to be increasingly challenged when we started to see the development academically of gender histories, of queer histories, that kind of thing. The dominance of class in this discourse becomes less and less important. So cultural history is, again, the question as to why we study it, why it's important. Well, it's enormously important, because it tells us, in many ways, it gives us and it's an important sort of gauge as to how societies are changing and why they're changing. Let's take an example. If we look at Britain in the 1960s, what we can see is a society where not only do you have this unprecedented increase in affluence, in consumer choice, in consumer credit, in full employment, and a welfare state that has the financial wherewithal to back all this up. But also you see a rapid change in social attitudes and kind of cultural attitudes as well towards things such as private life, intimacy, sexuality, sexual behaviour and morality, and what is considered prudent and proper. And an entire way of cultural understanding that had existed before the war, really perhaps since the 19th century, is fundamentally challenged by the 1960s and 70s. Old notions of propriety are swept away. Now, this isn't simply the kind of in the realm of anecdote. It's not simply in the realm of kind of the private or the trivial or the insignificant. These are important indicators as to why society, why social attitudes, and why political decisions or voting decisions based on these attitudes change in the way that they do. And it's interesting as well that by the late 1960s and early 1970s, there's this vocal backlash against these sorts of changes that people have seen throughout the decade. There is, the likes of Mary Whitehouse and campaigns to clean up television and that kind of thing. Again, an important part of Britain's cultural, and I guess social history, because these things very much cultural and social history. They're not placed in sort of hermetically sealed boxes next to one another. There's overlap and there is cross contamination, I guess, or cross fertilization between the two disciplines. So we don't need to kind of create those sorts of invisible boundaries. But the way in which people respond to social change is kind of the way in which they make meaning about the changing circumstances around them. You can look at most of the major revolutions of the 20th century, or counter-revolutions if you want to include things like Nazism. And throughout the things like the Russian Revolution or the Iranian Revolution or what have you, there are, immensely active cultural revolutions happening at the same time. Not only are if you have political revolutions and civil wars are literally battles being fought to decide what ideology or what political concepts will rule the day, but at the same time the cultural revolutions at during the Bolshevik era and later on into Stalinism as well, are deciding how we will think about society, how we will think about different social groups, how we will think about the purpose of what society is for, how we will think about things like work, how we will think about the family, and therefore there are strong and powerful links to how people think about work, family, and that sort of thing, and what actually happens with these aspects of society during these periods. So there is an immense amount of rich historical detail that comes from cultural history, and we kind of have Marxism to thank, but we also have the linguistic turn of the 1970s that, well, that one's a bit of a mouthful, to be honest with you. I'm going to have to work my way up to doing linguistics and post-structuralism, but we will get there. That's going to be another part of our little journey here. Anyway, if you want more on explaining history, go to our website. It's www.explaininghistory.com, and you can click on there to the Explaining History podcast. We've currently got about 14,000 subscribers and 89 audios, so join the party. It's not much of a party, really, to be honest with you, but you know what I mean. And we've also got a huge range of downloadable ebooks and free resources on the site, so check those out, and I'll catch you on the next Explaining History videocast. Thank you.